Welcome everyone to another episode in a founder's journey into Bitcoin. And today we're super lucky to be joined by Tom Giles. He is the managing partner of Megatron Ventures. But before I tell you about what Megatron Ventures does, let's start from the top. Tom, thanks for coming. Thanks for spending time with our audience. And just let me do a quick background overview, and then you can take it from there. And back to the audience here, Tom is a serial entrepreneur, and today he's going to share his journey to Bitcoin. He was a successful entrepreneur, so he was able to open up his shop called Megatron Ventures, where he's a managing partner. But before like all that happened, Tom, how did it all start? Can you start from like that point so you like that, I don't like that seed or the inception of, that, how did you become an entrepreneur even before Bitcoin, right?
Oh goodness. That would have to go way
Sure,
that would
go
have
way
to go way
back.
Growing up, my family was usually very, very active. So my parents would kind of throw me into everything. So I was in every imaginable sport you could think of. But I was also in gymnastics, which in where I grew up, interestingly enough, three of the people I went to was in club with went on to the Olympics. So like it was a big thing where I was growing up, and gymnastics especially, but pretty much any sport, you're doing it 7 days a week or at least 6 days a week. So you start developing these kind of personal habits that really kind of drive you with intrinsic motivation, and just start developing a lot of um, behavioral tendencies that lend themselves very nicely to an entrepreneur. So when I kind of was, my story really becomes interesting in 8th grade. So I broke my leg in a sledding accident.
Wait,
It was
hold
a
on.
cold day at school. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
very curious about those traits that lend themselves
Mhm.
good to entrepreneurship before you get into 8th grade.
Yeah.
Can you touch on a couple of
Um, uh,
those? I think the audience would be very interested.
yeah, no problem. So I think that this one's not as much of a learned behavior, but I think that having a very addictive behavior is actually a very good trait for being an entrepreneur. If you can channel it in the right direction. When I was younger, I used to channel my addictive behavior in video games, and that was the wrong thing to do. Like it'd be, holy cow, the
Yeah.
entire summer just disappeared because I was playing Red Alert Command and Conquer. And nowadays, I just don't even let myself touch a video game because I know that I will go down the rabbit hole. And instead, I kind of take that addictive, obsessive behavior and really focus on building a great product, building something that people really want and really use, or just really kind of running full steam ahead into creating whatever the business is that it needs at that specific time. There's a lot of other kind of traits, but those are some of the ones that I really like. Paul Graham has a wonderful saying that's really all about the relentless resourcefulness of being an entrepreneur. So being relentlessly resourceful is typically kind of one of the standout traits that separates a very successful, good entrepreneur with one who maybe isn't right for this space.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
But
Relentless resourcefulness, and then applying that addictive mentality
yeah,
to the right thing in entrepreneurship. Wonderful.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
thanks for going pausing there and sharing with the audience
yeah.
that. Now you were talking about 8th grade where you oh no, you broke your leg. And what happened
Yeah,
there?
yeah. It's kind of weird to go all the way back to 8th grade to tell a story about how I got into Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
8th grade, it broke my leg. It was a cold day, and everybody, in Wisconsin, we didn't so much have snow days, which is kind of weird. You get lots of snow, but we would still go into school. But if it was too cold, we wouldn't, because then it was too cold to have kids waiting around to the buses. So me being the super intelligent, smart kid that I was, and that's in hard air quotes, we decided to go sledding on that cold day and ran into a tree, and I was lying there on my side trying to lift my leg up to stand up, and I was like, nope, my leg's broken. So fast forward, did a surgery because of where the break was. They had to do a surgery called an intramedullary rod insertion. doesn't really matter. But what we found out about 5 years later is, as I was about to head off to the East Coast for college, was that they'd clipped a blood vessel. So for all of high school, for the past 4 to 5 years, I've been running around on a collapsed hip. And when we discovered this, it was okay, cool. Well, you're like 19, 20 years old. So you don't want to do a hip replacement because even though those have gotten a lot better, they're not the greatest these days. And every time you do it, you'll have another safe hip replacement in about 15, 20 years. And every time after that, it gets a little bit less good and a little bit looser. So I did a experimental reconstructive hip surgery that in aggregate was about 10 total years. Again, in aggregate, I spent about 4 years on crutches, 2 years bedridden, and the rest on a cane. Point of it is that instead of going off to the East Coast for college, I stayed at a small private school in my hometown, basically got taught from my parents' kitchen table at times, like doing ceramics from the kitchen table, which was pretty gnarly. But even though everybody in my family is science or hard science or medicine, and that was the track I took in college, I got pretty bored because for me, the college experience was about finding like-minded individuals, building a cohort of interesting people, and then doing things with them. I couldn't really do that while stuck in bed in a small private, a small town in southeastern Wisconsin. And at that time, also things like Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera, didn't really exist. So there wasn't the infrastructure to start finding those like-minded individuals virtually. So I got bored and I taught myself web design, web development, and I built a tool to put myself out online. And it really was nothing more than I was just interested in learning how to do this, and I was bored. So it took a gateway, those old computers that had the like cow spots and stuff on them, took that, kind of figured out what is HTML, what is CSS was the new thing, and that broke my head for a long time. But anyways, I figured all that out. I realized, hey, I could use this for the touring rock band that I was playing in. I'd been also playing in a regionally touring rock band, and we opened for other bands that were way better than us. And then, so my band started to use it, my friend's band started to use it, and then next thing I knew, this was actually becoming a real business product. So I along this
What did
time
that software
simultaneous.
product do? What did that software
Uh,
product
so
do?
that product was really just kind of a glorified CMS that then I added a community or a bulletin board, and then I added an e-commerce platform, and I added a variety of different things until we realized that, hey, this is working, and people, especially in the music industry, just by word of mouth, were wanting to use it. So kind of actually stepped back and said, hey, I, yeah, I have degrees. I have all these other paths that I could be taking that I'd been doing in school, but this was an interesting opportunity. And if I didn't do it now, it wouldn't be there later. I could always come back and be a middle and high school science teacher. I could come back and do these other things that I'd gone to school for. But this one thing that I just kind of stumbled into just because I built it for my own self, for my own problems, because I was bored, this could be an actual interesting thing. So I did that. I started building up a team around me, turned it into an actual business, an actual product. We rebuilt it from scratch, this time with engineers that actually know how to code. I could get it done, but I wasn't good. But that turned into a business and a product called Stage Walk. And that was really my first like
Oh,
official tech startup. Before that, I dabbled in creating things like a school newspaper, but then to pay for the school newspaper, we started a online record label, and we would put out albums. And then we did like a photo shoot for a
that's
calendar and stuff, and all these crazy things. So kind of always dabbling with it, but Stage Walk was the accidental product I created that actually found a very strong product market fit and became a real business. So I grew that.
can,
And
can we pause there for
the
a
whole point
second?
of, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because that's amazing. So you had a pain or a problem that so you solved it with
Yep,
software. And then
yep,
without even knowing it, you started getting to product market fit when people were like word of mouth telling other
yep.
people and they're using it. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Like hindsight being 2020, was there, I mean, this is a while ago, right? So like the lean
Yep.
startup, all those things were not that
Early
like,
2000s.
yeah,
Mhm.
early two, yeah. So it was just like so I'm guessing you didn't like run across like, you know, you just like stumble like, can you just share a little bit like how your intuition guided you, or what like, you know, when you're looking
Yeah.
back, like what happened? Like how'd you do it?
Yeah. Uh, it was very what I would now define as customer driven. So everything that was built was because of a very specific pain problem that was being addressed. Initially, I was the client. I was the customer who was needing the product. And
You're
then
the
it
customer
was the
zero,
band that I
customer
was
number
in.
one. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I started creating the same tool, but now for my band. So then I had my bandmates. They were also the customers. And then the other bands we started to play with, just, this is the word of mouth spread, they then became the customers, and yeah, it just kind of kept going from there.
Did they
But
ever like
every
say
single
like,
thing,
did they ever say stuff like when you showed your bandmates, or or the friends that were also playing in bands, did they ever say like, oh, this is great, but what if it had this? Did they say stuff like
all
that,
the
or
time.
all the time? All right, all
Yeah,
right. And,
yeah.
what did you
For
do when
probably
they
a
said
long
stuff
time.
like that?
Well, initially, when I didn't know any better, we tried building it. Just like, no questions asked, we just do it.
Yeah.
Later, I started realizing, okay, like we're just going to build a better mousetrap this way. We're not actually going to build the really interesting thing.
Uh-huh.
What is it? Henry Ford has the thing where it's like, if all they had ever done was given what the customer wanted, we'd just be running around in faster horses. We wouldn't actually have cars.
Yeah. Well
So
said. Well
started
said.
trying, yeah, I started trying to kind of step back and say, okay, what are they actually asking for? Like, what is the actual pain point that they're trying to address? Not what they think they want or the solution they think is the right one, but what is the actual pain point that they're encountering and that we're trying to solve for, and then seeing if there was a more efficient, a better way to do it that could be productized, that could fit into a broader platform, as opposed to just building a variety of different individual feature sets that we cobbled together. And so that's where we got to. We did not initially start there, um, but there was a lot of rewriting. There was a lot of throwing away code early on. But again, it was just kind of a hobby initially. So that was, I think,
Wow.
fine.
Wow. And let's fast forward. So what happened to that company? Like you're,
Yeah.
sorry,
So
yeah, you're getting to that point. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think the whole point of this is like not just what is my entrepreneurial journey, but what is my journey into Bitcoin and the broader ecosystem here.
Mm.
And so the whole point of Stage Block, as we really turned it into this kind of proper tool that 70 to 80% of all major US marketing musicians were using to effectively run everything they did online and a lot of what they did offline. So like Metallica's website, their fan clubs, their email marketing, their social marketing, their in-person merch sales, etc. Everything was really in this one tool that we built. And the point wasn't to be a better website platform or a better e-commerce platform or a better marketing platform. It was really that because we had all those tools in one spot, we had direct access to all the primary data points. And so we could basically aggregate all those together to provide, say, Metallica or Justin Timberlake or whoever it was, a macro viewpoint of their entire audience and allow them to drill down and find information about, say, their super fans or all their fans in this specific region, and then use that to automate marketing and drive more sales and just basically create a giant flywheel. So that was StageBlock. It was basically a giant centralized data-driven company. Um,
Wow.
Late 2010, I first heard, and like, if I haven't made this clear or kind of my talking patterns haven't alluded to it, I'm very much a builder, a tinkerer. I like getting my hands dirty and just playing around with things all the time. I'm a first adopter of pretty much everything, and I can't wait for Monday with the supposed Apple AR VR goggles release. I'm definitely the type of person that will be getting the first gen of that. But anyway, late 2010, I first heard about Bitcoin. I did not understand it because everything I had spent the past 8, 10 years building with StageBlock about aggregating and centralizing data, I could not grok the concept of decentralization, decentralized data sets. Like how, what? That made no sense to me. So I started just digging in because that's how I typically approach things. If I don't understand something or I just want to learn it better, I try to get my hands as dirty as I can. So I started trying to mine Bitcoin. I played around with color coins when those came out. I did a whole bunch of different things all the way through. Then in, what was it, 2015, as we continued to grow StageBlock, as I continued to kind of figure out these decentralization thing, 2015, one of our partners, as we started to expand outside of music, going into large brands, broader entertainment and so forth, one of our partners was a company called Fullscreen based in LA, owned by an entity called Otter Media, which was a JV of AT&T and the Churning Group. So they basically said, we're going to be partnering, but how about we just buy you instead? And then, throw the proverbial gasoline on the fire to help accelerate growth. So I couldn't really say no to the offer. It was a very successful outcome for everybody involved with StageBlock. So
Wow.
sold StageBlock to Fullscreen, moved out to LA, and started kind of getting my feet wet into the broader entertainment sphere and also the broader kind of LA tech sphere. That was 2015. Also around that time, because I'd been kind of really getting my hands dirty with Bitcoin, I also started to get into Ethereum around that. Yes, you. Ooh,
Yeah, I have a question.
spider just
So
landed on my
yeah,
keyboard.
because we're about to dive deep into like this journey to Bitcoin and Ethereum now. So but before we go there,
Mhm.
did I like what market share did you have with StageBlock when you sold it?
Um, So around the time, the stat point that we typically talked about was that we had about 70 to 80% of all major US market touring musicians. So there's a lot of
Whoa, so okay,
caveats
so
in there.
hold on. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
hold on. 70 to 80%
Sorry.
of all touring
Yeah.
musicians. So what like
Yes.
Justin Timberlake, was
Yep.
Lady Gaga one of them? Like
Metallica.
Metallica,
Uh,
was
yeah.
was Michael Jackson one of them?
No,
Oh shoot! All
unfortunately
right,
not.
all
That
right,
would have been
okay,
amazing.
all right. No, okay,
Uh,
but no,
yeah,
Metallica.
we
That's
did
huge.
some
That's
stuff.
huge. That's massive.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
we did
so
a lot of
basically,
really cool things.
most of the big names. Most of the big names. Okay, so yeah, that's amazing. I mean, 70 something percent market share. So you guys were like the 200-pound gorilla in the room, basically, right? Or 500-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah, we were a gorilla, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it was
yeah.
also kind of interesting because I grew that out of Chicago, and I would say that the vast majority of people in Chicago who should have known because they were in the tech or startup community, they knew of us and they knew we were doing interesting things, but because of how we set up the business, it was never about us or our brand. If you were on Metallica's site during those days, you would have been able to figure out it was us, but you'd have to look. So we were
Oh,
always fairly kind of in the background. It's not about our brand. You didn't care about StageBlock. You care about Justin Timberlake.
yeah, yeah. No, no, it makes sense to make it a white label, right? But you guys were like the
Yeah.
brains or yeah, the thing that makes it run on the back end. No, that's
Mhm.
amazing. 70 to 80%. I mean, I mean, if you kept on going with it, maybe the antitrust law people would have come after you. The monopoly people would
I mean, yeah, perhaps.
which is not a bad
It's an
problem to have,
interesting
right? Which is not
space.
a bad problem to have. But yeah,
Good
but
problems.
congratulations. Yeah,
Thank
congratulations
you.
on that. And then we're
Mhm.
when I interrupted you, we're getting into you're in LA. You sold your
Yep.
company.
Yep.
Stakeholders happy, right? New chapter in your
Yep.
life, entertainment, and then you
Yep.
were getting into the tech scene, and this is where Bitcoin Ethereum was like round two,
Mhm.
basically, right? Round one was 2010, and you're like, what the hell is this? It's like decentralized, and
Yeah.
everything I've been doing is centralized.
So
Like, get
confusing.
out of here.
Yeah.
But fast
It's the
forward five
most
years,
bizarre
yeah, a
but
bizarre thing.
exciting thing. Yeah. Yeah. So after a bit, after kind of the golden handcuffs started to come off at full screen, I was on the proverbial roof. Silicon Valley is a great TV show. If you haven't seen it, highly recommended. But yeah, so I'm basically sitting up on the roof going, what am I going to do next? that was around the time that I started really focusing in the broader crypto, blockchain, whatever word you want to describe for the space. So I started really digging in on that. I spun up an entity. Really, initially, I was just doing kind of piecemeal. I started doing angel investments in various different picks and shovel companies, like who's doing the best blockchain node data analysis, who's helping do X, Y, and Z different things for the broader space to really create the kind of underlying toolkits and tool sets that could be used to build up everything. Slightly embarrassing, I also started getting into the EOS space around then. I was in LA, that's where it was birthed. I knew everybody there, and it was this concept, the story of, hey, this is a better way to build stuff than the existing toolkits. Like that was a very compelling story. Obviously, now I'm embarrassed about that, but I did play around with just a lot of different things, a lot of different concepts. Then I basically like wrapped all of my both investments and personal projects into an entity called Megatron Ventures, which is still
That's where
really
magic.
today, which is
Okay.
where I kind of and what I kind of figured out was that sure I could give money to a bunch of these startups, but even more valuable for many of them than just the money was leaning in very aggressively and helping, especially on product related things. So whether it was the 0 to 1 phase of, hey, what is the real problem that you're trying to solve? Who are your actual target demographics in the market that you're trying to go after, and what is the right solution to build? And then what does that solution actually look like, and how do you actually get it built? And then putting together the right people to actually create it. That's a space that I've over the years discovered I'm very good at. So I really kind of through Megatron Ventures, yeah, it sometimes would just straight cash. Oftentimes it would be cash and really leaning in to help build them. It was also around then that I got introduced to a community in the LA scene, specifically in like the Santa Monica or east side of LA. It's been a few years since I lived in LA, so I forget what we call that side. But we built a company at that point in time called Give Bitcoin. The concept was, hey, like how do we Bitcoin it was really starting to crystallize as this is the thing I care the most about, not just because I've been in it the longest, but it's clearly the kind of winner of the broader space. When I would go back to the Midwest, I'd talk to family, friends, anybody, and even my tech savvy friends, they would be like, oh yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin, even if they meant Ethereum or they meant some other blockchain or crypto thing, they thought the entire space was Bitcoin. So that was kind of, for me at least, one of the clues that, hey, Bitcoin really is the key thing here. But as a builder, I couldn't not be interested and excited with Ethereum or at the time things like EOS. So we said, okay, well, what could we do to help Bitcoin get more adoption and really help kind of go past these? So we built this company called, at the time it was called Give Bitcoin. It was, I would gift you a Bitcoin and then you wouldn't be able to touch it for 2 years or however long I wanted to lock it up for you. And then the service would provide you with educational content to help you learn and understand what it was that I had gifted you, so that hopefully when your time period was up and you had access to it, you would have learned enough to not just sell it. So that was where we started, and that company, that business, that product eventually evolved into something that's now called Swan Bitcoin. I kind of during, I think it was right before the pandemic hit, I was having some recurring issues with my hips, so I kind of stepped back from that company, really kind of into a more passive advisor role. But then, as luck would have it, another startup that I had helped get going that I thought that I was also going to be kind of stepping back from was in the ticketing and live event entertainment space. So that was a company called Project Admission. And so I ended up having to lean in more on that, but mostly just kind of on the, okay, we need to make sure that this company doesn't die when all of live events and all of concerts and everything is shut down. Like there were no sporting events, there was no ticketing happening. So
Right.
I really had to lean in on that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to keep going? Because that's not the
Yeah,
end.
no, I yeah, I mean, I'd like to know what product that it evolved into. So you're giving Bitcoin and then it evolved into
Yep.
Swan. What was the new service there? Um,
With Swan.
yeah.
So it's very focused, very simple dollar cost averaging. It's basically a tool that makes it really easy for people to buy and hold Bitcoin.
Oh,
So in
nice.
many
Yeah.
ways, yeah, in many ways, I think internally, at least in the beginning days, again, and I haven't been super actively involved, but in many ways, we kind of viewed it as like entities like Coinbase and so forth. They had started off as very Bitcoin centric, but then they expanded their scope. This was no, let's ignore the scope. Let's only focus people on Bitcoin, and then let's make it as
Yeah, cool.
simple as possible. Mhm.
Very cool, very cool. So what was so now we're deep into Bitcoin. You've already decided that, hey, uh
Yeah,
this Bitcoin is number one, right? Or you want to get
yeah.
behind Bitcoin. Was it like more gradual, or was there like something that clicked, what what helped you sort of like have that realization that if I guess I guess you could call it cryptocurrency, right? Is a foundation.
Yeah, sure.
What 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 helped you realize that Bitcoin is
It was
the one?
fairly gradual. Um, honestly, I think kind of the story I told about when I would go back to the Midwest and I would talk to family and friends about it,
Mhm.
even if we were actually talking about Ethereum or actually talking about some other cryptocurrency or blockchain, my friends and family back in the Midwest, they referred to everything in the broad space as Bitcoin. And I think that that was the singular thing that really kind of locked it in for me, that a Bitcoin is not going anywhere. This is going to be a key component to this broader space. At the time, I didn't think that it would necessarily be anything more than just, say, a settlement layer for something like an Ethereum,
Mhm. Mhm.
allowing people to build the things on top of it, but then settling all the way down to Bitcoin. Because I couldn't necessarily at that point in time see from a technical standpoint how it could be done, which is in part why when I first heard about Stacks, which I wish I had heard about it when it was Block Stacks, but I missed that. When was it? It was like the month after Stacks 2.0 launched was when I first heard about it. And as soon as I heard, I kind of went down a rabbit hole. I started doing a bunch of public tweeting as I was researching it. And that for me was when it really clicked that not just was Bitcoin not going anywhere and going to be the settlement layer for all of this, it really had the potential and opportunity to be the singular solution across the entire broader space. And I've always
Wow.
been
Wow.
fairly convinced that it would be Stacks that would help unlock that. I still remain fairly bullish on that as an opportunity, but whether it's that or some other tooling, yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the broader
Yeah.
space. We leveraging Bitcoin across everything.
So you've been an entrepreneur for basically your whole life, right? So your
Pretty
entire
close.
adult life, basically, right? And then so I mean, and then in the, I guess from 2015, you're also an investor. Is that correct? Is that when you sold?
Yeah,
Did I get the date wrong with
yeah. Well,
2015?
yeah,
What was
yeah. That was when I don't remember. I was trying to remember this before the call, like when and what exactly was my first investment, excluding things like Stage Clock, which you could
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
say I
Well, every
invested
founder
in,
invests in their
or
own company. Yeah,
Mirrorgram, or
yeah,
yeah. But like,
yeah.
what was my true proper first investment? And it definitely wasn't in 2015. It would have been at least a year or so. So let's say 2017, maybe.
Okay, nice, nice. Okay, so I mean, so you've been on both sides of the equation, the investor and the
Mhm.
entrepreneur. So I mean, I think it's safe to say that you understand innovation and the startup space, and entrepreneurs. You have empathy for them on a very deep
Oh yeah.
level. So, and you've also seen the industry evolve, right? From when you first started Sage Block to where it is today. And so I'm curious because so Ethereum is this massive beast right now. It's got probably tens of thousands of dApps running on it, right? And
Yeah.
probably thousands of altcoins. And yeah, and then its market cap is right now is despite all that, it's half the market cap of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's market cap has been growing, right? But it's almost like there's no spigot or there's no release valve to capture that value
Yeah.
until like recently in the last 12 months, things have been maturing for Bitcoin, right? And most recently, as we know, ordinals just like made everyone realize, OMG, the same JPEG on Bitcoin is worth more. and
Yeah.
and I was looking at the
Crazy.
on-chain data. It's insane. Like any kind of collection, doesn't matter where they are, if they don't have a clear roadmap to ordinals, it's like the liquidity has been sucked out of them. The prices have dropped, and it's like it's
Interesting.
no doubt ordinals has already become like the center, right? But like, what do you think that implies? Do you think that same logic would apply for, say, the same DeFi, but built on Bitcoin would be better and other type of Web3 products? Like, how far does that go? You know?
Yeah, no, I didn't know that about like the on-chain data suggesting that ordinals are kind of sucking the value out of existing other
Yeah.
properties. But so I don't know that I necessarily, or maybe I just haven't internalized it yet, so I can't speak to it about
Sucking is probably
how
not the right
that
word for it.
exists.
Yeah, let me just
Yeah, yeah,
explain that for a second. So basically, you notice people who collect NFTs or trade them or whatever,
yes,
they've been selling their holdings in other collections that do not have a roadmap to put that MC
got
onto
it.
ordinal. Yeah, and then so they
Interesting.
are the ones taking their liquidity out and then reinvesting into ordinals. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, from a high level, it makes a lot of sense because it will, to
yeah,
me, it makes a lot of sense because since I first learned, I mean, even before I learned about stacks, I was hoping that there would be a way for whether it was Ethereum directly or some other technology to settle everything down to Bitcoin. I mean, to me, that's made a lot of sense for at least the past 5 years or longer. And really, again, it goes like all the way back to when I just think of, okay, we're all early adopters. Yeah. But to actually become mainstream, to actually become something that can be large to the scale that it can and should grow to, we're going to have to go outside the early adopters. We're going to have to go outside the techies. We're going to have to get to the mainstream, just general individual. Like think your grandma Flo or whoever that is. Like how could that person start using and leveraging these tools? And that's what needs to happen for it to really go to the bigger next level. So at that point, it's when I just like for me, it's all about that experience I had going back to the Midwest where everybody thought that anything crypto and blockchain was just Bitcoin. Like you'd turn on the news and it didn't matter what channel you were on. If they were talking about anything happening in the blockchain space or the broader crypto space, it was always Bitcoin, even though it was like not the actual technical answer. They were specifically talking about some different chain, but they referred to it always as Bitcoin. So from my perspective, it's always been that that is the clear solution for where the underlying settlement layer has to go. You can also go to things like, okay, well, what defines something that is going to have long-term success, like as especially as a monetary thing. I think it was in the Bitcoin standard, they talk about how, or the author talks about how one of the metrics for how good a monetary standard is defined is how long it's been around. And Bitcoin has historically always scored pretty low in that because it's brand new. It hasn't been around for a very long time. But the longer it keeps going, the longer it doesn't die and go away, the more valuable it just inherently becomes. So
yeah.
as the
So
original crypto asset, of course, it's going to be the underlying one.
so I want to infer something from that.
Yeah.
So we know from ordinals that the same JPEG is worth one Bitcoin, and I want to infer
Yes.
from I believe that the same DeFi, but built on Bitcoin, is going to be more secure and better. And that's
I
going to
agree.
cause liquidity to jump over to Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And intuitively, I feel like this is going to happen within the next 12 months, 18 months. But no one knows the future, but
seems
it
right.
feels like the tides have definitely turned. Um, and yeah, I mean,
Yes.
as an investor, as an entrepreneur, what would be an exciting project that's built on Bitcoin that you would want to invest in, that you would want to, give your product development services to,
Mhm.
your product market fit expertise to?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are
You and
some
I
of
have
those?
talked about this.
Yeah,
We've talked about this before, so
yeah,
you
yeah.
probably already know what my answer
I know.
is.
I'm asking,
I
I'm letting the audience know
yeah,
so they
I
can build
know.
something you want.
Oh, I
Yeah, I
know.
mean, because I think
I
it's a really awesome product. If those things that you talked about were built, I was like, I'd be the first
yeah,
user, right? Or you'd be the first user.
yeah.
I'd be the
So
second user.
this is a bit of a selfish act or ask because this is
Yeah.
what I want. Um, I want a very, very, very simple tool for me to be able to, in a self custody or decentralized fashion, put my Bitcoin into someplace and then uh, earn more Bitcoin as a result of
Earn
having
native
done that.
Bitcoin as a
And
yield.
yeah, yeah, like that's it. But if I were to build it, the key thing that I would try to unlock, and I still don't have exactly what the technical solution is figured out, but I would want to have that Bitcoin yield be delivered to me at least once a week, ideally every 2 to 3 days, but even better if it could be every day or even the live stream. And I'd want that explicitly to help start developing kind of the habit of people wanting to be engaged with it and being reminded about it consistently and seeing that it was coming. The other kind of key thing that I would focus on with this is a really strong, very cleanly designed product experience and user experience to help convey that this is a trustable situation. And whether like I want it to be self custody, but I don't know if it needs to be self-custody, if that is a technical barrier, as long as you can figure out other ways through the product to help the end user feel very comfortable and trusted that this is a secure way to do it.
Yeah, so as you probably know, because you've been a staunch supporter of the Bitcoin Startup Lab, you've been mentoring
Mhm.
several times, and you
Yeah,
see some of the teams. Some of the teams are launching live now that
yep,
solution. They're generating the yield in different ways, but it's all native Bitcoin.
yep,
And
mhm,
so the core mechanism works, and I'm sure they could also, it's just a matter of programming, as you know, to issue it every day or the yield every week,
yeah,
right? But these are very early projects because the Bitcoin Startup Lab starts at the idea stage, and I think they could use your
yeah.
expertise now. I mean, maybe it's a good time to make the rounds and see which one of them are worthy of your time and your capital, right, and your expertise and product market fit, user experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be really
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, but
very interested in that.
yeah, that's another conversation. But yeah, I mean, we're running up on time here. Have about 5 minutes left.
Oh yeah.
Maybe are there any um words that you want to share with people, because there are a lot of people right now who are sort of like
Mhm,
circling around the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? People
mhm,
like sort of dipping their toe in, testing the, yeah,
mhm,
what like these are founders that maybe it doesn't matter, like some of them are first time founders, some of them are more experienced, right? Some are more experienced, but
mhm.
they're thinking about taking the plunge right now. What do you have
Yep.
to say to them?
The two things I would probably say are number one of the biggest, best advantages that we have as startups is that we move fast. So we don't necessarily get hung up on making it the perfect best decision on at every single venture point. We just make our best guess. We try it, and the worst thing, or actually the best thing that could happen, is you quickly learn, hey, that was the wrong decision. So then you backtrack and now you know what the right decision is. But moving quickly, both in just making decisions about what you're going to do and then building it, putting it out there, testing it, getting feedback so that you can keep iterating and evolving it. That is the single most important thing to do, especially as an early stage tech startup. just move fast on all on all levels. And then the second thing that I think is a little bit more specific to this space is that I don't think we collectively, especially in the Bitcoin space, have been giving enough emphasis and priority on product design, and really kind of trying to make something that is simple and beautiful and easy to use. A lot of us are very much approaching it, and very understandably, from the hard engineering and technical perspective, and really focused on making things technically work, and kind of forgetting or glossing over the sometimes it can seem illogical, but the super valuable component about just making something sexy and flashy and just very simple and easy to use. Product design.
Yeah,
Move
product
fast and
designers,
product design.
UX people, yeah, this sorely missing the space. So yeah, this is an open invitation to those of you who have been honing your skills on product design, user experience, right? Either on Ethereum or Web2, it doesn't matter where. Like, come join Bitcoin. This is the future. If you want to be in Web3 and cryptography, Bitcoin is ground zero. It's a renaissance. Even you can even apply AI here, right? And a lot of things are transparent on chain. So a lot of the computations are actually easier to do, right? The data sets are more easily accessed in the Bitcoin world than, like, say, the traditional internet world. So the sky is the blue, the ocean is blue, and the sky is the limit right now, right? It's yeah, so sort of like your backdrop. I'm very envious of the nature you're in right now. That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
It's pretty great.
But thank you so much, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you, Albert.
A Bitcoin's a founder's journey into Bitcoin, and we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So if anyone is in the audience, get ready. We're going to invite you up as a speaker.